That for me is difficult, but there are some scholars who say that is where it applies. Wallahu. But the actual hitting in of itself, turning it into something metaphorical, looking at it in terms of the context of the verse, and looking at how the Prophet ﷺ spoke about hitting and how he described it in certain ways and how it should be, it's very difficult to take it away from the literal one and move it into a metaphorical one. Wallahu a'lam. Any other questions? No, totally.
So you mentioned that as a husband you are supposed to be the protector of your wife and against the let's say mother-in-law.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile between, like Allah said that don't even say oof to your parents?
Yeah.
So between
that. That's very good. So basically, when Allah Subhanahu wa Taala uses the word oof, what does it mean? What is that? It doesn't actually mean. It's a symbolic way of representing what? I'm sorry? Disrespect. Right? Disrespect. That you're not allowed to disrespect your parents. If I'm defending my wife, I'm defending her honor. And if my parents there's a difference between my parents taking offense and me disrespecting them. Does that make sense? So if my parents take offense to something, or your parents take offense to something, that's very different from me, because I have to control my respect for them. If they get offended by something that I do, and I'll give a very clear, easier example. If my parents are non-Muslim and I'm Muslim, and I'm praying and I'm offending them, what do I say? Well, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala said, don't say oof, so I shouldn't pray in front of them? No, I should still pray. Why? Because praying is an obligation, just like protecting the honor of my wife is an obligation. So if I'm protecting your honor, I can't yell at them. I can't call them names. I can't say things about them, but I can say things like, please don't talk about my wife like that. Please don't say that, that's not true. I'm still being respectful. They'll get upset. Don't get me wrong. I know plenty of situations. They will get upset. They will get angry. But your role as a Muslim, your obligation as a Muslim was to not disrespect them. And that's what we have to do. We have to make sure that, and again, and I know this is difficult or this is hard, I was like, listen, nobody held a gun to your head and told you to get married. This is a decision, this is an active decision we all made. It's an active decision that we all made. So we have to understand the different roles that are definitely involved in that. So we as sons, we need to make sure we don't disrespect our parents. And we as husbands, we need to make sure that we protect our wife's honor.
So there could be times where you're going to hurt your parents, like feelings.
That's okay. Again, offending your parents is different than disrespecting them. Are there times where your parents will be offended by what you do? Yes. And we have to understand, we live in a society, as long as you deal with other human beings, somebody will always be offended. Somebody will always be offended. But our goal at the end of the day is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the beautiful thing with our relationship with Allah. Allah is very clear. Allah says, I want you to do this, this, and this, and I don't want you to do this, this, and this. And you know what He means? He means, I want you to do this, this, and this, and I don't want you to do this, this, and this. The problem with our parents and our wives and our children, sometimes they say something, but they mean something else. This is not the case with Allah. Allah is very clear in what He wants from us, and Allah is very clear what He wants us to stay away from. And even in this situation, He wants us to protect our wives' honors, and He wants us to respect our parents. Can somebody get hurt in this relationship? And let me put it the other way around. Let's say the mother-in-law is great, and the wife is the one who is oppressive. In this situation, what does the husband do? He has to defend the honor of his mother, even if his wife gets hurt. Or even if her feelings get hurt. I mean, don't start hitting her, please. But even if her feelings get hurt. Because you have an obligation that you need to fulfill, and you are still being respectful for your mother, and you're still protecting your wife's honor. Where you do this and how you do this is different. Obviously, doing it in front of your mother, it might cause more problems. In general, when it comes to that dynamic and that relationship, it should be done, the parents should be spoken to separately and the wife should be spoken to separately. Doing it all together just makes a bigger problem. Well, you should have said it like this, or you should have said it like that. Well, why didn't you talk about this? It becomes more problematic. So dealing with those separations, first separate the situation and help everybody understand, okay, what is your role? Because a lot of times you won't have them getting along. It's unfortunately, especially in our culture, where the in-laws and the wife, the beau is not, they don't get along. She's supposed to be lower, and she's supposed to do everything they do. And I've even had situations where a husband will tell his wife to do something, but the mother-in-law will tell him to do something opposite. And she'll say, you have to listen to me. Like, just straight up. She'll just say, you have to listen to me. He's my son, so you have to listen to me. No, she doesn't. She has to listen to her husband. And that's a very difficult pill for some people to swallow. Yes,
So, common cases in our communities also exist, and it has happened where kids actually, against the wishes of their parents, get married.
Yeah.
Is that a sign of disrespect or something that who is right and who's wrong, and
No.
whose decision ultimately should actually be considered?
All right. Well, this topic is a little deep. But basically, one thing that we overlook as a community and we tend to forget is that many of us are not knowledgeable. Many of us don't have a depth of knowledge of Islam. So the thing that we push forward and the thing that we value and the thing that we do know is our culture. So we push our culture and we impose our culture onto our children. So our children today, and these are real problems that are within the community that everybody needs to be aware of. Sexual activities that has increased amongst the Muslims. So if you actually get surveys of Muslim kids, I'm not talking about kids, I'm talking about Muslim kids. Sexual activity has increased, substance abuse has increased significantly and is a major problem. Running away, atheism, these are all issues. But these issues aren't because they have a problem with the religion. It's usually because they're rebelling against their parents. And the reason for that is because the parents, they would send them to public school. And I personally had this problem too. My parents sent me to public school, and I went to public school all, through high school, college, I was in public school. So I would be at school one way, and I would come home and I would have to be another way. Because they had certain cultural expectations from me that you need to be like this. Your hair needs to be like this, you need to dress like this, you need to look like this, you need to make sure you brush this many times a day, you need to make sure that your socks are, these are the type of things that we tend to impose on our children. And the question I would like to ask everyone, that we ask ourselves, and I don't want answers. When was the last time I yelled at my child about salah, and when was the last time I yelled at him about his haircut? And this is something that we really need to put in perspective. Because at the end of the day, that haircut isn't that important. But this child, this is what he's growing up with. There was no real push. There might have been, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give those parents tawfiq that are doing that. But there wasn't too much of a religious push, but there was a very big cultural push. And now they have this dual life that they live, and they get to an age where their parents are completely immigrant mentality. Whether they're from Pakistan or Egypt or whatever. And these kids are completely what? American. So they feel now that there's this huge disconnect between me and my parents. And what does that disconnect cause? It causes distrust. Meaning, I cannot trust my parents to choose a good spouse for me. So I need to choose one for myself. So there are a number of layers that are involved in that. Would I advise a child to marry someone whose parents are not happy with? No. I wouldn't do that. Because there are certain things that a parent is going to look out for his child that the child himself isn't going to see. But at the same time, the parents need to meet halfway and say, okay, well, there are certain characteristics that my child is looking for that maybe I'm not seeing. And a very common example of this, and something that's very difficult for people to internalize and understand, is like, for example, if my son, he wanted to marry a black American girl. This would be very problematic. This would be very problematic in the immigrant mentality and the immigrant mindset. Except for those, there are a few individuals, alhamdulillah, Allah has made them open-minded. But I'm just giving a very practical example. He wants to marry a black American girl, or he wants to marry a white American girl. This becomes very difficult for us to accept internally. And he knows that before he even gets into the situation, and this is why he doesn't even want to deal with his parents. So it's a series of problems. It's not just one, it's not just, many times, unfortunately, we as communities, we look at the end result. We say, well, he started doing drugs. Oh, he ran away from his, or she ran away, or she did this, or she's like, what led up to that? There are steps that led up to that point. That child wasn't born and didn't come out of his womb saying, okay, I'm going to smoke a joint one day, or I'm going to drink alcohol. That's not what happened. All of the children are born upon fitrah, and we forget that. But we always look at the end result and be like, okay, they did this, and they disrespected me, and they did that. What did we do as parents?
My question is more towards, since they are studying poet, institutions, they go to universities and
Yeah,
meet,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's when how they actually, the first interaction happens, and next thing they would like to marry, you know. And if parents are against those wishes, then,
Yeah.
you know, what, you know.
So again, it goes, a lot of this goes back to Tabia and how we raise them, because they're going to the co-ed institutions. We need to understand, okay, what is the situation that our children are going to be in, and we need to open those lines of communication with them before it even reaches that point. The other thing that I would encourage is try to go to events where there are a lot of Muslims. And the reason for that, okay, I understand that there are going to be times where he's looking at what he's not supposed to look at, but at least he's looking at other Muslims. You know, I would prefer, and I don't encourage it, please don't misunderstand this. I would prefer that two Muslims are dating than a Muslim and a non-Muslim. I don't encourage that, but I would still prefer that because there is a chance that those two individuals will go on to get married. So we need to understand that there are certain levels, and we need to look at what is the lesser of the two evils. So one way to maybe to curb that, encourage helping our children getting married, and there are ways that we can deal with that too. How do we want to get them married? What level of involvement do we have? Because at the end of the day, we don't marry our children early because we don't want them to become a burden on us as parents. In general, that's why. We don't want to marry them at 16, 17, because they're like, okay, well, he's just going to bring another person into the house and they're going to have kids and it's just going to be a problem. Like, you figure out a system. Figure out a system. There.